How can it go so wrong? Why does some people just seemingly have an unquenchable thirst to inflict pain and suffering onto others? A mental addiction that melts itself with the sexual drive and the sexual thoughts. Chimpanzees display some signs of sadism. They can be ruthless. They'll rip your balls off and gouge your eyes out. That may be one of those things that they do instinctively though. Maybe tearing into your face works as a defense to weaken their opponent. Maybe ripping your balls off is to make sure that you won't reproduce. But there have been instances where the chimpanzees, just like us, display brutal acts of sadism. And just like with us, the chimpanzees do it to themselves. They'll gang up on their target and torture it. They'll dig their fingers into the flesh and they'll bite areas that isn't necessary to bite if you simply want to win a fight. But that's monkeys, right? They have a wild and savage aura about them. Humans are more intelligent, more sophisticated, but once in a blue moon something will snap in someone's head. We saw it with Ted Bundy. On paper he was everything a human being is supposed to be. Sophisticated, intelligent and social. He was like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde in a way. He had these two sides. One was kind of elegant and well-groomed. The other was savage and feral. But that's not really all that surprising. We all have a dark side. Most of us keep it under control. Some of us are consumed by the wild beast inside, and some of us, like Ted Bundy, uses both sides to work together towards a common goal. Some use it to create, and some use it to destroy. But we all know about Ted Bundy already. Many of us know that he liked to bite. A very raw and intimate way to hurt someone. But while Ted was strolling around in America before anyone had even heard about him, there was another man who liked to bite. His name was Wayne Boden, and in the time frame of a couple of years he haunted the city of Montreal, and would since then become known as the vampire rapist. They say it all began with Norma Vaillancourt. But did it really? I'm not so sure that it did. It was on July 23rd, 1968 that the dead body of Norma Vaillancourt was found nude and brutalized. She had been raped by her killer and he had supposedly bit her breast. The connection she would have to Wayne Boden, also known as Bill, was the MO and the signature biting. One might think that this confirms that Wayne Bill Boden in fact was the killer of Norma Vaillancourt, but it has been claimed that a man named Raymond Suave confessed to the murder of Norma Vaillancourt, but I can't confirm that. In short, the murder kind of remains as a mystery. It's possible that she was the first victim of the vampire rapist, but it's also possible that Raymond Suave killed her. I have found no proof of either scenario. But Norma aside, the vampire rapist would still claim 4 victims, and he made his first confirmed appearance in 1969. Shirley Odette was a troubled young woman. She was 20 years old and suffered severely from a mental illness. She had moved to Dorchester with her friend Kenneth earlier that year, But despite having a friend in the same house, things were complicated for Shirley. Every time Kenneth would have to leave for work, young Shirley would get worked up. She would get nervous and anxious. She didn't want to stay inside the apartment by herself, so she often sat outside on the front steps while Kenneth was away. She sat there troubled, vulnerable, and exposed to the elements. Sometime earlier, Shirley had gotten a new neighbor in the apartment complex. He was tall, handsome, and very charming. His name was Wayne Boden. It was in October of 1969, around 2 a.m., as Kenneth was working his night shift, that Shirley again decided to sit on the front steps. That's when he appeared in front of her. He was charismatic and managed to charm her quite easily. She felt a sense of safety with this man, but little did she know that it was all a front, a prop to lure her in. She even called her boyfriend that night and told him that she was hanging out with a new friend she had met. It was at some point during the night, however, that Wayne shifted his gears. His urges were scratching to act out. He was like a caged animal that just couldn't wait to open the lock. Tried to call Shirley at around 5 a.m., 3 hours after she had met Wayne Boden, but she was already dead by that point. She was found outside, behind the apartment building. She was still wearing her clothes, but she had clearly been through something horrific. Her cause of death was strangulation, but it was what had occurred before this strangulation that worried detectives. She had been raped, rather violently, and the killer and rapist had also bit her. He had dug his teeth into her breasts, leaving a distinct bite mark. A signature move that would ultimately be his downfall. After her death, some stories came out. Stories that she enjoyed the more violent sex acts, that she had participated in dangerous sex games before. But the thing is that those are just rumors, and those rumors have today grown to be a part of the legend. It has been claimed that Wayne Boden targeted his victims that way, that he chose women who wanted to engage in dangerous consensual sex and then went over the top and killed them. But there's absolutely no evidence of that whatsoever. Whether Shirley was into that kind of stuff or not will probably never be known, but Shirley aside, the other victims were just that, innocent victims, fooled by Wayne Boden and his charming front. Another thing that adds a layer of tragedy to the murder of Shirley Odette is that she was pregnant when she died. Wayne Boden was embracing his new mantle as the vampire rapist. A little more than a month had gone by since the murder of Shirley Odette, and Wayne Boden, the vampire rapist, was focusing his attention at another victim. Her name was Muriel Arkham, and just like Shirley, she was 20 years old when she died. It was in the fall of 1969, and Muriel was out partying at a nightclub. At some point she met a handsome, charming fella, Wayne Boden. The two hit it off pretty well, and kept in contact with each other. And that is how he got her where he wanted her. One day Wayne picked Muriel up from work and was going to drive her home and have sex with her. But things didn't go as Muriel had planned. When Muriel didn't show up for work at the jewelry store the next day, her coworkers started getting worried, and so they contacted police. Police broke into her apartment, and at first nothing seemed too weird. Well, except for the smell, I assume. It didn't take too long for them to find Muriel's corpse. She was laying on her couch, her bra had been torn off, and she had been raped, strangled to death. Just like with Shirley though, Muriel had a bite mark on her right breast. It was clear to investigators at this point that they had a problem on their hands. The vampire rapist had struck again. Jean Way was 24 years old. She and Wayne Boden were friends, but they were not in a sexual relationship. Jean had been dating another man for a while, but she had trusted Wayne enough to allow him into her apartment. And so, on the night of January 17, 1970, Jean Wade died. She had let Wayne into her home, and he had attacked her. He had raped her and put a belt around her neck, squeezing it until she died. He didn't bite Jean though, and the crime scene indicated that she had been in a struggle with her assailant that night. Before Wayne Boden left her dead body there, the belt still embracing her throat, he He threw a green blanket over her, only the feet sticking out. Jean's boyfriend, the man she had been dating, had made plans with Jean that night. He was going to see her, but as he stood outside, no one would open the door. What he didn't know was that not far away, his girlfriend was being raped and strangled. The boyfriend went to a bar, had a few drinks and returned. I don't know how, but he managed to get inside the apartment at this point and saw the feet sticking out of the blanket, and as he pulled them off, he saw her dead, blank expression. Frozen in time. Frozen in a moment of terror and tragedy. A little more than a year had gone by and Montreal hadn't seen any trace of the vampire rapist. He had become more of an unpleasant memory at this point, but 2,500 miles away in Calgary, Canada, a 33-year-old schoolteacher named Elizabeth Porteous would become the final victim of Wayne Boden. It was in May of 1971 that he chose her to be his next. He doesn't strike me as an overly impulsive serial killer. He reminds me more of a cold and calculated serial killer, but it's clear that he had a hard time controlling his sexual drive once he got himself worked up. Maybe that's what happened with Elizabeth, because it was really dumb of him to kill her. They had been seen together on many occasions and he had been seen picking her up on the day of her murder. They had been dating for a little while, so Elizabeth surely had no issue letting him inside her apartment on that night, May 18, 1971. At some point though, he attacked her. He raped her and strangled her just like with his other victims. He also left his signature move on Elizabeth, a bite mark on her breast. It didn't take long for the connections to be made. Colleagues of Elizabeth had seen him pick her up, and some of her friends told him of Bill, a handsome man with neat hair she was dating. Police learned that Wayne Boden was a former fashion model, and that he was now working as a traveling salesman, and of course he denied any murder. But the biting, his signature move, would become his downfall as the bite marks left on Elizabeth Porteous' corpse was compared to his teeth. And it was a match. Wayne Boden was fucked. And so he confessed to the murders of Shirley, Muriel and Jean in Montreal. But he never confessed to murdering Norma Vaillancourt. And as I said earlier, another man confessed to murdering her 26 years after it had happened. Boden eventually became nothing more than a bad memory for the city of Montreal. Although he had a short burst of media attention driven to him in 1977 after he had escaped the prison, he was only outside for 36 hours though, as he was recaptured eating a meal in a downtown Montreal restaurant. After that he began wasting away, and in 2006 he died. He was lonely, and he had been overshadowed by other killers throughout the years. Jeffrey Dahmer, Ted Bundy, Paul and Carla Homolka, John Wayne Gacy and more. He never got any fame for the innocent lives he took between 1969 and 1971. Instead he died of cancer in 2006. The handsome and intelligent monster, the vampire rapist Wayne Boden, fell into obscurity, leaving nothing but tragedy and destruction behind.